Good evening, everyone. Good evening. My name is Andy Wynn. I'm your Tarrant County Commissioner, Precinct 2. First and foremost, I would like to thank Pastor Evan and everyone at Bethlehem for allowing us to be here and share some information regarding a very important project. I also want to recognize Justice of the Peace, Matt Hayes. Precinct 7 is here with us. We also have Dr. V, the Superintendent of Mansfield ISD, is also here with us. Sharing information tonight will be G.K. Manius, the County Administrator of Tarrant County, and Mr. Robert Early, the CEO of JPS Health Network. Pastor Evan, also a trustee on Tarrant County College, has been walking the walk with us during this process for the past 2 years. He volunteered to serve on the Citizen Blue Ribbon Committee to help the county and the hospital district assessing the health care needs of the present as well as the future. He has been very instrumental in pulling together individuals from many parts of our diverse community so we can make sure that we listen and hear from everyone. So, Pastor, thank you so much for your leadership, your servant leadership. And I would like for you to kind of make some introductory remark, if you will, please. Please honor us with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The protocol has already been set. Again, we appreciate the fact that you are here today. This is very important in regard to gaining information regarding this particular bond opportunity that we have. As a part of the Blue Ribbon Commission, one of the things that we wanted to make sure of as it concerned Southeast Tarrant County was that we paid special attention to the mental health care needs for this area. Of course, we know that there's definitely, surely, a deficit in that regard, and we believe that we were able to meet some of those needs in this particular, again, with this particular opportunity. We wanted to give attention to the fact that we needed a healthcare clinic closer to, again, the Southeast Quadrant as well, in particular paying closer attention to South Arlington, Mansfield. And I believe that we were able to give that proper attention also. So this is your opportunity to ask those questions. Please do. And know that as a citizen myself, we wanted to also see to it that we were not going to spend taxpayer dollars or raise taxes concerning this particular bond issue. And I believe that we were able to do that also. And I want to thank, of course, my friends from MISD who have been successful in that over the years in passing bonds. And again, I went to school there, so to speak, on the board of trustees at MISD. And one of the things we wanted to always do was to pay close attention to the tax rate, and as it concerns each and every one of you, that, and me too, that we could keep some of that money in our own pockets. So we believe that that was done. This is your opportunity to ask those questions, and welcome to the Bethlehem Church. And I see members of the church here and others in the community. Thank you all so much for coming to the Bethlehem Church. We appreciate you. All right.
Thank you, Pastor. I made a terrible mistake. I failed to introduce Ms. Short, Julie Short, a council member of the city of Mansfield. We just met at noon today. So my apologies. So please help me welcome her.
I'm going to give this to you. Okay. Well, good evening. Before we get started, we have a few housekeeping issues that we need to go through. We have interpreters here, and first of all, we have a sign interpreter, And I will let her begin, and we're going to ask each one of these interpreters, a Spanish interpreter and a Vietnamese interpreter, to ask the audience if there is anyone who needs interpretation services. Okay. Martha.
Mi nombre es Marta, estoy aquí para servirles. Si alguien necesita traducción, favor de decirme. Gracias.
Tôi tên là Idria O. Nếu ai cần thông dịch viên xin giơ tay lên. Dạ, cảm ơn.
Okay, since there is not a need for any interpreting services tonight, the three of you may be excused. Thank you. Just a few more things about tonight's presentation. What you're going to hear tonight is an educational presentation. It is not an advocacy presentation. We're going to talk about the program itself, some of the background that led up to eventually the Commissioner's Court and the Board of Managers of the hospital district to accept the recommendations of the Blue Ribbon Committee and then move this process farther along. We're not advocates. It's something that as a government employee, we can't do. And so the only thing that I will talk to you about as far as voting is that I will tell you that this proposition is at the bottom of the ballot. You're going to have to go through all of the races, individual races, and then this will be the first one. So if you decide to vote for this, either for or against this bond package, you'll need to go to the bottom of the ballot. And I just see we have a special guest. Do you want to know? Why don't you introduce her? Yeah. Lorraine Miller, where did you go?
She's trying to hide.
Miss Miller was one of the two co-chair of our Blue Ribbon Committee. And we tried to work her as hard as we possibly could, and she still came back. So it was good. And she did a fabulous job for us. Lorraine, it's great to see you.
And Pastor Evans was also on the book. You might want to mention he was also on
Yeah, I think Commissioner Wynn announced that he was on it, but Pastor Evans also served on our Blue Ribbon Committee, and he, like Miss Miller, they attended every one of these. And when we get to that Blue Ribbon activity, I'll talk a little bit about how we work that group. One other thing, and before we get started, if you have a question, we're going to go through. I'm going to make a presentation. I've got a small slide deck here, and I'll show you that. But if you would like to ask a question, we would simply ask that you come up to the mic here and tell us your name, because we're recording this, and this will be on our website as we have all the other meetings such as this. So just simply come up and state your name and then ask your question.
Okay, can I interrupt just one quick second?
Sure.
Mark Barry, we've never had a town hall meeting. We had 3 members of the Blue Ribbon Committee are here, and I don't know that you saw Mr. Barry, but Mark Barry is here, and Mark was on the Blue Ribbon Committee.
That's
as well.
right.
So we have 3 of the Blue Ribbon Committee members, which is pretty amazing to have all 3 of them here, and we're proud of that and appreciative.
And thank you, Mark. We appreciate it.
I don't think there's any more that I know of.
Is there anything else you'd like to interrupt before we get going?
I didn't even want to interrupt that.
Just, you know,
Thank you, Mark, for allowing me to get into trouble. I appreciate it.
just barge in at any time, okay? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this issue. Before I get into the slides, I'm going to tell you this in a chronological order. Several years ago, the hospital district decided that they needed to go out on a bond package. And one of the reasons was that the last time the hospital district actually had a bond package was in 1985. It was 33 years ago. And a lot of things have changed in Tarrant County in the last 33 years. For example, we were less than 1 million people in population 33 years ago. In fact, we were probably around 800,000 people. Today, we are at over 2 million people. We also know that within the next 20 years, that population is going to grow by at least another 1 million people. So in another 20 years, we are going to have a population of anywhere from 3.3 to 3.5 million people. But other things are happening also. The demographics of our population is going to change significantly. There are going to be more people that, like me, hopefully, that grow older and need different types of services. And when we look at that, it's not just the same percentage of seniors, if you will, or I'd like to call them just more mature people, since I'm one of those now. But it's not the same percentage, but it's a larger percentage of our population is going to be basically senior citizens. There's other parts of the demography of how our population is going to look that convinced the hospital district that they were getting very, very close to needing to do some major renovations and major construction of their facilities. And so when we first developed a program, we took it out to the community and said, this is what we think we need. And we had listening sessions, very similar to this. And the one thing that we found out was that there were things that the community wanted and felt that were needed that we had not included in that initial bond program. And so rather than simply moving forward with that program, the Commissioners Court said, we're going to need to stop this process and rethink about how we're going to structure everything that's going to be contained within the bond package. And so about 20 months ago, the Commissioners Court said, we're going to create a citizens committee that's going to look at what we need. And we're going to charge them with really two different things. We're going to charge them with trying to look at how the county's healthcare needs and what they're going to be in the next 10, 15, 20 years, and how those medical services are actually going to be delivered. And then after we complete that, we're going to make a determination as to what role JPS is going to play in the delivery of those healthcare services. That's pretty difficult. It's difficult because medical technology and the way healthcare is delivered changes constantly. And so we can maybe look out 5 years, maybe 10 years, but they did an exhaustive study on those particular issues. We gave them some resources. We went ahead and we engaged 2 national firms, consulting firms that do this for a living, and that had proven track records to help the committee that was eventually known as the Citizens Blue Ribbon Committee, to help them work through that process. The first was Health Management Associates, and they were the visioning group. And then we also hired a company, a firm called Cummings. And what Cummings does is they're nationally recognized for being able to cost facilities, medical facilities, and the equipment that they're needed. Because we not only wanted to know how we were going to provide health care, what role JPS was going to play in that process, but whatever that role was that JPS was going to play, that we also understood the costs. that were going to be associated with that type of a package. And it was interesting looking at the committee, quite frankly, because our staff, my office staff, we staff that committee. And I will tell you, when we first saw the committee and all the members, it was an extremely diverse committee. We had representatives from all parts of the county. We had representatives that had diverse political views. And we also had a group that I thought we were really going to have to work very, very hard if we were going to get something that was unanimous from the committee. And under the leadership of Ms. Miller and the other co-chair, they did. They worked tremendously together. I wished you all could have seen how they worked together. And at the conclusion of their work, the committee voted unanimously to recommend to the Commissioners Court and to the Board of Managers of the hospital district 5 major elements. And those major elements consisted of a new and expanded mental and behavioral health facility. It also included expansion of the Level 1 Trauma Center. It also recommended a new tower, a new bed tower, which we'll talk about in a little bit, a new cancer center, and a new ambulatory surgical center, and something, and this is the 6th one, I said 5, but there were really 6, something that Pastor Evans was, Pastor, can I say you were vocal on this particular issue?
It's okay.
Say that, okay. The expansion of community medical homes, which are clinics. But clinics not like we currently have, but expanded services clinics, so that if a person would want to receive treatment at JPS, they wouldn't simply have to go downtown Fort Worth. Because one of the major issues that we found was that there is a true lack of transportation, of getting people from Mansfield to downtown Fort Worth. And quite frankly, it's a lot easier to build a clinic closer to the community than to bring mass transit to the entire county. So that's what we did. And it worked out very well. In February of this year, the Blue Ribbon Committee made a recommendation, or presented their report and made recommendations to the Commissioners Court and to the Board of Managers. And those recommendations were received unanimously by both boards. So with those 6 items, we asked Cummings to put a cost to that. And the total cost, if we would, and this is important to understand, if we would build everything brand new that they recommended, that cost would be $1.2 billion. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. But the Commissioners Court and the board, our leadership group, said, okay, we want to do these issues. We have to address them. We need to find a way that we don't ask the voters to pick up an entire tab of $1.2 billion. And so the first thing they did, like we all do, they went to the hospital district and they said, how much money do you have that you can bring toward this effort? And the hospital district said, we can bring, over a 10-year period, we can bring up to $300 million. Hospital district is a huge operation. Their annual budget is over $1 billion. They are a big organization. And we also said, okay, what else can we do? So we talked about other things. Some of the things that interest the court and the board was to maybe enter into some public-private partnerships, so that maybe we could work with the private sector to lower the costs. Our goal was to accomplish all 6, but to accomplish it at a smaller price. Commissioners Court was also very adamant that good management and effective management could figure out other ways of lowering that cost. And then finally, and the most important thing, the one thing we heard every time, both from the board and from the Commissioners Court, was that whatever dollar amount we settled on for a potential bond package, that dollar amount be something where that we can pay for that cost, not only the building of the buildings, but also the cost to maintain the buildings and to operate the buildings with no tax rate increase. And quite frankly, the county is fairly good at carrying out that particular mission. Over the last 15 years, we've sold almost $600 million, or we've sold almost $600 million worth of debt at the county. And we did that. We build the buildings, we build the roads, we paid for the operations and the maintenance of those facilities. And we did not increase the tax rate. In fact, the hospital district over the last 15 years has decreased their tax rate. The county has continued over the last 15 years also decreased their tax rate. In fact, over the last 3 years, each year we have decreased our rate by 4%. So that's a total of 13%, almost 13% decrease in the tax rate over the last 3 years. We have our tax rate is the lowest of the big 6 counties in Texas. Your governing body manages your money very well. They really do. So we had to determine what was that final number. And eventually it came to be $800 million. But the court was very clear to say an amount up to $800 million. The court and JPS will be seeking voters' approval to present an authorization to spend up to $800 million of debt. The court and the board is very clear that they're going to try to do it for a lot less. We simply, at this point, can't make that determination. But I know, and I'll speak for the Commissioners Court on this, that we pledge to you all that we're going to work as hard as we possibly can and be as efficient and effective as we possibly can and have been in the past to bring that number down even a little bit more. So I want to show you a small slide presentation. We're going to move through this. There's only 10 slides, and Robert wanted to have, 33, 34 slides? And I said, no, that's not going to work tonight. We've covered a lot of this material anyway, but we'll go through the slide deck real quick. Okay, the hospital district bond proposition was developed over a multi-year process. We talked about this. We talked about the number of years it took to plan this with public input, the critical need for current and long-range medical assessments, a blue ribbon committee, and the work by the court and the hospital district board of managers. One of the things that we continue to say, because it's not an option, is that the hospital district's $800 million improvement bond proposal will not increase the tax rate. We've done that. We've proven, we've got a track record that shows the community that we manage money properly. And we intend to do that on this. We also mentioned the fact that we've had a tax rate decline over the last 15 years. One of the things that people do not realize is that when you look at the revenue streams for the hospital district, only about 40% of the monies that they need to operate comes from property taxes. Others come from insurance, others come from grants and other revenue sources. Only 40% comes from the property tax. This is going to be a pay-as-you-go bond program. If we don't believe that we can afford to not only incur and pay the debt to build a building, but also have an adequate revenue stream to maintain and operate those facilities, then what will happen is that we will not move forward on that until we can. It is truly a pay-as-you-go activity. We believe that this activity as it relates to issuing of any debt is going to occur over a 10-year period. We're not going to sell the debt all at one time. And then we honestly believe that millions of dollars are expected to be saved through efficiencies. Let me tell you what that means. One of the most critical things that the Blue Ribbon found was necessary was mental health. And currently, our mental health hospital that's at JPS mostly is full at most times. And we have more patients that need inpatient care than we can give them. So what the hospital district has to do, they have to take those patients and send them to a private facility. Sometimes that's a for-profit, and most of the time it is a for-profit facility. Just those people that we have sent, these individuals that we sent over the last year, JPS can deliver the same service for about $475 a day. If we send them to an outside facility, it costs us $625 a day, a difference of about $150, that bridge. With the number of patient days that we have to send off campus, we believe that as we expand the mental health facility, that we can save at least $9 million a year. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money, and we can do a lot of good things for our community with that money. Finally, and this was an item that I want to give Commissioner Wynn a lot of credit for this. When we first went into this process, we found that we have to change not only how we deliver health care, but how we view health care. And it's a community-wide thing. We have to quit thinking of how are we going to take care of people when they get sick, though that's of critical importance. The thing that we need to focus on initially is how do we keep people healthy? You know, if we can keep people healthy so they don't need medical care, two things happen. You know, first of all, they lead a higher quality life, which is probably more important than anything else. And the secondary thing is that we as Tarrant County citizens are not going to have to pay through our taxes to treat people that are ill now that could very well be healthy. A good example of Pastor Evans's ideas of more clinics. If we can get people to come to the clinics whenever they're beginning to feel sick, and we can treat them at a clinic, then quite frankly, that is the least expensive way of treating an individual. What happens today is that many simply choose, because of an inability to get down to downtown Fort Worth or to one of the other clinics, they simply don't get medical care. And by the time they realize that they have to go to the doctor, they are so ill that most of the time they get into the back of an ambulance and they do go to there's their transportation. They do go down to the main hospital, and the most expensive medical care that you can provide is in that emergency room. And so if we can deter people coming into the emergency room by keeping them healthier, then that's what we want to accomplish. Just some quick facts about the hospital district. Every 25 seconds, a patient need is cared for by the district. We haven't had a bond package in 33 years. We know how much the population has grown. And the fourth bullet, I think, is important to focus on. the district has Tarrant County's only level 1 trauma center. So let me tell you what that means. That means if you're involved in a serious accident, if you're accidentally shot or hurt, if you have a major heart attack, there's only one hospital that you can go to in Tarrant County that when you get there, they will have a doctor that specializes in whatever illness you have. That's what a level 1 trauma center is. And that's very important. But we have to continue to upgrade the level 1 trauma center because, for example, Dallas County has 3. If you look to the west of Fort Worth and Tarrant County in Mansfield, what you're going to see is a more rural population. They don't have any of them over there. So they're going to be coming to this particular facility. One of the things that we know is that JPS can't do this alone. They're going to have to work with other not-for-profit and for-profit hospitals to provide the services. Currently, we only serve about 37% of the county's mental and behavioral needs. Even with a new mental health hospital, we're only going to be able to serve about 50%. And so that other 50% has to be handled by the nonprofit hospitals, the Methodist hospitals, the THRs, Baylor hospitals. That third bullet is important. JPS Hospital is a primary training facility for local doctors, nurses, and other healthcare professionals. Every doctor that leaves medical school has to do a residency. JPS has the largest family practitioner or family practice residency of any hospital in the United States. So here's the thing I want you to do. The next time you go to your primary care physician, your doctor, ask them where they took their residency program. I bet you $1 that the vast majority of them will say John Peter Smith. They also have a total of 12 different residency programs, and we train a lot of doctors. But the reason, and we're getting a new medical school in the county, and so that means we'll have more medical students that need to be trained. The importance of this is that in most cases, doctors, nurses, other medical professionals, where they get their training, they stay in the community. And they become doctors and nurses and other healthcare professionals in their community. If we can keep them here through the residency programs and other training, that means the probability is that they're going to stay here and they'll be treating us. We don't want to go through this whole process and then have our professionals, our medical professionals, leave. We want them to be here for us. And so this is what the ballot is going to say. And if you have, there's a placard card at your deal. I'm not going to read this. It's the one in the blue box. I will tell you that if you intend to vote for this proposition, you're going to have to go to the bottom of the ballot. Okay? It's at the bottom of the ballot. But it is the first proposition at the bottom of the ballot. So after you finish voting for whichever candidate you're going to vote for, go to the end of those candidates, and this will be the first proposition that'll be on the ballot. There'll probably be other propositions on there too, but this will be the first one. By the way, that card also has, on the other side of it, has the 5 main issues, and then I also included level 1 trauma because I personally think level 1 trauma is something that we absolutely can't afford to ignore. So, this is what's included. The expanded mental and behavioral health facilities, an updated and expanded hospital facilities for patient care and doctor nurse training, updates to the trauma center, a new cancer treatment center. You know, that was one of the things that we found was also critically important, was the need for new and expanded cancer treatment. The 4 new regional community patient care facilities, that's and continued school-based student health partnerships. And then finally, an updated and expanded ambulatory outpatient surgical facility. A lot of people don't know what that last one means. It's a lot of words. What that means is day surgery facilities, because we don't have those now. And we're utilizing the big surgical suites that are attached to the trauma center. And so people that need to have surgery, but not critical surgery, but surgery, orthopedics and things like that, they may be scheduled and they may lose their slot because we have an emergency that comes in and we need the surgical suite. Plus, it's less expensive to have outpatient surgery done in an outpatient surgery facility. So that's what that is. So, this is where you can find out more information. This is our website, www.tarrantcounty.com. And this icon, Tarrant County Hospital District Bond Election, is on the front page. And you can click there. We have made sure that all the meetings of the Blue Ribbon Committee, all the meetings of the Commissioner's Court that dealt with this, all of these meetings, they will be on that, or they are on that website. There's also some frequently asked questions, and you can see what other people have asked and the answers that we have provided to those questions. And so with that, Mr. Early and I are here ready to answer any questions. And if you'd like to ask a question, please come up and use the mic, and we'll attempt to answer the question. Questions? You don't need to be shy. Yes, sir.
Stony Short, I would like to ask if you could elaborate on how the bond package works and how the proposed $800 million bond package, there's no tax increase, how those two work together to make that happen.
Very good. I want to make sure that that mic is on also. Yes, okay, great. So, how does it work? First of all, we're going to ask the hospital to, when you look at a public entity's budget, there are really 2 different sections on the tax rate. There is one which is a maintenance and operation, and there's one that's a debt service. So what we're going to ask the hospital district is to initially move $10 million from the M&O budget over to the debt service budget. And with our financial advisors, we believe that we can borrow approximately $200 million initially off that. So you have basically the same revenue streams, but you've moved it over to a debt service part. The hospital district over the past 3 years has created a future fund, and we have 125 million, Robert?
It's really close to that, yes, sir.
Okay. And the way that fund has been created and funded is because in the last several years, actually about the last 10 years, the district has had some excess revenue at the end of the year, and they've moved that revenue over to that. We believe that there is enough money that goes over every year that can fund that initial $200 million. As we move forward, first of all, remember the district is also going to bring $300 million over. So as we move forward, we're going to watch very closely if there's additional revenue that is generated by the district. Now remember when we talked about the slide on the revenue, it was 60% of the district's revenue is not property tax. So there are times whenever we get a little bit more money. Sometimes we don't get as much, but the district has always balanced its budget. Never doubt that they don't manage their money properly, because they do, and they watch it to the penny. And so as we go forward, we're going to do several things. We're going to see if any money ever is freed up again, so we can maybe incur a little more debt if we have to. And then we have the $300 million that the district brings over, and we will operate that way. If there's not revenue that we can identify to pay the debt in the M&O of those new structures, then neither the district nor the Commissioner's Court is going to authorize us to sell any more debt until we can afford it. So that's how that's going to work. I know it's a long answer, but that's kind of business that Robert and I are in. So
what happens to the project?
you'll need to come up here and I knew I was going to get one. No. Okay, Michael.
First, I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. We really appreciate you taking the opportunity to allow us to hear this information and get it firsthand. But if that scenario takes place, then what's the next step? If those bonds are not available and those dollars are not there, what happens to the project?
We have to look at several different things. First of all, the public-private partnership issue is critically important. And that allows us to at least build the buildings or have those buildings built and us not have to bring a large amount of money up front to it. Second of all, we need to continually look at how we do business, and that's a responsibility that Robert and I have, and to see where we can become more efficient. I'll give you an example of something that is where I can show you right now. When you look at the new tower, currently we have about 500 beds. But we have rooms, and 47% of the beds that we have are in multiple occupancy rooms. That means that you have at least 2, maybe 3 beds in each room. Well, the problem with that is that, first of all, HIPAA is not going to allow you to have more than 1 patient in a room. And that's a privacy issue. That's also a healthcare issue because of infectious diseases. And so when you have 1 person occupying a room that has 3 beds, then you're highly inefficient because you've got 2 beds that are sitting there that no one is in. Second of all, these buildings are fairly old buildings, and medical technology has changed tremendously. And I'm being very serious. The rooms simply aren't big enough to hold the equipment. So you become very, very inefficient, not because of what you do, but because of what you have to do in order to take care of that patient. So those are the type of efficiencies we're looking at. Yes, sir.
And I think Stoney's question was probably on the minds of a lot of us. With a project this size, anytime, there's always concern about tax increases.
Yes.
Somewhere along the way during the project. Second question for you. There's a mention here of 4 regional health centers.
Yes.
As a part of this proposal. Have you all identified those 4 locations, and can you share that with us today?
Robert, I'm going to ask you to answer that question.
Sure. What the Blue Ribbon Committee said, and the Blue Ribbon Committee is really, without the pun, a blueprint for us. And they had suggested, because of the population increases, that those clinics go in each one of the precincts that the commissioners have. And what we'll do is, we haven't gotten those exact locations, but what we would want to do is put those clinics where the epicenter of that population growth is, so people would have the best opportunity and the best ability to go to those clinics. And if you look at this area, if you look at this side of Arlington and the Mansfield and the Kennendale area, you've seen huge increase in population. And so we've looked at that, and we will continue to look at that. So there's a high propensity that this would be certainly an area that one would want to look at. And we'd look at the same thing in Lake Worth, and we'd look at the same thing. We are opening up a clinic, and it's just going to be a transformation of a clinic, but we're opening up on October the 11th, one in the Northeast. Our clinic out there has been in an old hospital built in the 70s, and it's not very conducive. So we're going to make that change. And the other key that I want to make sure that we note is our clinics are going to try to be the best they possibly can be for all services, so that when you come into the clinic, we can do a woman's wellness exam, and you bring in an adolescent, we can do adolescent clinic care, and then you take your husband by the ear, because that's probably how you have to bring him into our clinic, and we can do a wellness exam there as well. So you're going to one clinic and getting most of the services that we can possibly put there, from x-ray and lab work on down. That's where you get conducive care, and that's where you get a continuum of care. I hope that's okay. We don't have the exact locations, but we do have the regions and where they'll be.
Hello. Oh, hi, Latrice Womack. Just wanted to know, how will this benefit senior adults? How will the bond benefit senior adults?
Robert.
What we've looked at in the county is major areas where you're going to get significant growth from an elder population, and we see that as a big future for JPS, is providing that care so that we can continue to, from the 4,700 births we had last year at JPS on through the life of the individuals that are there. So I see JPS playing a key role in elder care. Now, our new clinic that's opening up on October the 11th, it has a component for geriatrics care. And we're proud of that, and that will be a model for a lot of our clinics. The other thing that I will let you know, which is pure fact, is we just got a certification by the Joint Commission for geriatrics care at our facility. We're one of 2 hospitals in the nation that received that certification. So I think you're going to see an expansion in elder care and senior citizen care, particularly in the area of dementia and Alzheimer's. I would note, and we didn't do it earlier because they weren't here, but we have 2, a current chairman of our board and a former chairman of our board, and I think that says a lot about that commitment from the people that serve JPS. And Charlie Powell, who's right there, and Pastor Ralph Emerson. And I will tell you, from Pastor Emerson's standpoint, this is a really tough evening for him, because he's sitting in a pew and he's not preaching from up here. So this is quite a challenge for him to be sitting where he is. But I'm honored that both of them are there. No, Charlie, you're not going to preach. No. Thank you for that question.
Yes. Let's.
There you go, Mike.
If these bonds pass, what is the first project JPS plans to use the funds for?
We don't have a very first project to use it for, but the emphasis of the Blue Ribbon Committee really centered around a lot of what we should do for our mental health population. And to Mr. Manius's point, JPS is the only psychiatric emergency room in Tarrant County. So if somebody is at risk to themselves or risk to society, or somebody is threatening to take their life, either through the police or through their own efforts, they're going to come to JPS. That's the challenge for JPS. We get 1,500 to 1,600 psychiatric patients a month at JPS. The challenge is if that number is too great for the number of beds of the facility we have, then we end up paying to put them in a private facility, and that's very expensive. So I think our emphasis is definitely going to be for mental health, and I think if you read through that Blue Ribbon Committee report, which is on the county website, it really sort of gives you a format by which JPS, I think, would definitely look into. So that would definitely be an emphasis. I don't know if you'd say number one and where's it going to go from what's the amount, but you can definitely see an emphasis for mental health, and we see that as a major portion of what JPS should be rewarding the community with. Good question. Thank you.
Candace, you know we did tell everybody to come up front, and
Judge Matt Hayes, gentlemen, thank you for coming out here. Welcome to the far southeast corner of the county. We appreciate you being out here. As we discussed last week, helping people with mental health challenges has become one of the passions of mine. In Commissioner Wynn's mental health town hall a couple of months ago, I was talking with a psychiatrist, and he said that very few medical students are going into psychiatry. I just don't know what we have as our residency programs. Do we have something like that, and what can or will we be doing to help encourage medical students to move into that field?
Two things, and the first thing I'd like to do is compliment the judge, because the judge is dealing with tough situations in a courtroom as we're trying to deal with them from a medical standpoint. And I appreciate your efforts, and I also appreciate the commitment that you've made to citizens' lives. To answer your question, we do have a residency program at JPS, and there aren't many in the nation for training students in psychiatry. So after they get out of medical school, should they choose a psychiatric residency program, there's a good possibility they're coming to JPS. The second thing is there is a shortage, particularly in adolescent psychiatry, which is a key component of what we need to be doing. And what we would look at towards the future is look at the aspects of telemedicine, where you can have an individual in a location providing more care to more individuals through the telemedicine route. And that's going to be one thing that we not only will explore for psychiatric care, but all the aspects of what telemedicine might be able to provide us from urgent care on down. So, good question. Thank you, Judge.
other questions? Yes, sir.
Another question, start
Yes.
short. Assuming the bond package passes in November and you get the $200 million loan, when would you receive the $300 million from JPS, and how long do you see it taking to put that money to action?
We have, would you like to answer that, or you want me to?
I'm fine. What we would do is, to the point Mr. Manius raised earlier about the future fund, we would begin to put the future fund towards those efforts. But our $300 million commitment is going to have to be over time, and that's why I appreciate the court allowing a 10-year period of time by which we would do that. And we would do that through our own efficiencies. And to your point of what we do if you didn't have the money, and I think it relates to your question too, is you got to look at those projects that help you create the project, but also create some either type of a revenue stream or a financial flow that can allow you for more projects. The one thing we need to realize about JPS in this community is we continue to grow. And it's a challenge to deal with, because being the only level 1 trauma center between here and Lubbock, you're going to get a lot of cases of people that show up in your emergency room or your trauma base that you don't and cannot, nor would you want to, refuse. So all those individuals, from a psychiatric standpoint or trauma standpoint, we need to do. So we don't have a dollar amount, but JPS would look at those efficiencies and look and try to figure out over time how we would bring that $300 million to the project. And I think the key is selecting those projects at the front, either behavioral health programs or others, that would also help us create the program, but also create some level of a revenue stream so that we could help out. So that and we know good and well, there's not going to be a tax increase. We don't have a history of tax increases. JPS does not, and that's not a commissioner's court. I don't want to speak for Commissioner Wynn. He does an excellent job of representing his constituency. I don't see a tax increase coming from them. So those projects aren't there. There's not going to be a tax increase that pays for them. So I don't have a dollar amount, and I don't have a time frame, but I know that the future fund that we have will be dedicated to that initially, and then we'll move forward with efficiencies. I hope that's fair. If that's not, I'm happy to try again.
I guess the main question I was asking is, how long before, once this passes, you get money, how long before we see things changing?
Okay.
The clinics being built, the beds being available, for the start of that at
Sure.
least.
We'll try that start initially as soon as we possibly can. And I think what we'll do then is work with our board. We have an 11-member board that's appointed by the county commissioners. We'll work with the commissioners court, and we'll work with our board to try to set those priorities, and we would want to do that as soon as possible. We want to do it because almost every service line at JPS is at a max point. There's not room to take in more, and that's a challenge for JPS. So from our best interest, we want to start as soon as possible.
So is that November 2019?
No, I think what Robert is saying, and I agree, as soon as we have confirmation that this bond package has passed, then what we will do, we will begin the process of doing what I call the soft work, the architectural and engineering aspect on the buildings. Obviously, the board and the court need to make a decision how they want to move first, but I just don't see a situation where we're going to wait any longer. We're going to start, not just the planning process, but the type of activities that need to occur before you can start building a building. And that takes some time. I mean, architectural, yeah, but we're not going to wait a year before we say we need to get an architect. Yes.
You bet.
Other questions? Then I'd like to ask Commissioner Wynn, if you'd like to come up and make some final statements.
Commissioner Wynn, before you mentioned, I do want to thank the employees from JPS that are here. We have a good many folks from this part of Tarrant County that work at JPS, and I'm thankful. There are 6,500 people that work at JPS.
And certainly the folks at Tarrant County too.
Yes, exactly. And I'm real proud of the folks that work at JPS and dedicate their time, and some of them are here tonight, and I appreciate that very much.
I want to thank everyone for your presence again. I will be available 24/7 if you would like. If you have any other questions, very good questions were asked tonight, but I'm sure between now and October 22nd, which is when early voting begins, you can call me, my office, call GK, Robert Early, or anyone. We'd be glad to answer any additional question that may pop up in your mind. This is a long process. If you talk to Mr. Powell, the chairman of the board, or Mr. Early, or Mr. Manius, or any one of us involved in this process, we will tell you this has been a long process, but a process of trying to understand the challenges of the future. We looked at demographics, we looked at the indigent population, we looked at the underserved communities, we looked at the geriatric population, we looked at the mental health crisis as well as the mental health needs in our community. So it has been about a 2-year process. But by getting to this point, we are not even have begun the first step yet. The first step is on the ballot. Okay, once the voters say, hey, we think that you guys have proposed a right solution and we will support it. That's what you're gonna tell us on November 6th, that you think that we have proposed the right solution. Once you give us your blessing, then that is when we will do the real heavy lifting, the planning, the implementation part of it. But as you know, we are about to add another 1 million people to Tarrant County. And many of them will settle here in Mansfield. Many of them will settle here in Mansfield. And we can't just build a big enough hospital to house all the healthcare issues of the future. We just can't do that. So what we have to do is we have to work together, starting with this church, with the members of this church, to build a culture of health. We got to help each other taking care of ourselves, right? Exercising, eating right, stay away from stuff that may kill you, like alcohol and stuff like that. It's okay to have a drink once in a while, but not every day. Things like that, right? So helping each other, helping each other understand, helping each other, seriously, helping each other stay healthy. That is really important because it is a quality of life to be able to spend time with your family rather than be in a hospital, and also to save a lot of cost on health care. The state of Texas budget, I learned that the cost of health care is about to exceed the cost of education, right? So we have to do something about that. And the only way is for us to work together, starting with the members of this church and the members of this community, to help each other stay healthy. And if we did that, we will basically keep the pressure down from the healthcare network, and we don't have to raise more money in the future to take care of our health issues and our health challenges. So this is the first step. It's not even the first step yet. After November 6th, that is when we have taken the first step. But it's a journey that we can't travel alone. We just can't do it alone. We need your help, and we need your support, and we need you to walk side by side with us all the way into the future, even 20 years from today. So thank you again for showing up this evening. Thank you again for listening to us, and thank you again for walking with us on this journey, which we know will be challenging, will be very difficult, but we are determined to solve the healthcare challenges in our community. So thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.